And it's so funny because years later, I still see these people that I met way back when telling me this meal was legendary because of the circumstances. And I say that about food. You know, food gives hope. Food is the conduit to tough conversations. And if I could put every head of state, especially nowadays with, what's going on over in Ukraine, if I could put all the heads of state around one table, get their national dish, have one bite and pass it to the right until everybody's eaten, our world would be in a much better place, because I think food is the equalizer.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're hearing this, you have once again tuned the Consequence of Habit podcast, your host, JT. This one is probably one of the biggest ones I've ever been part of. And that's not to put any of the other episodes down. It's just, this week I had a conversation with Robert Irvine, celebrity chef, entrepreneur, philanthropist, huge supporter of the first responders, veterans. And it was one of the most motivating conversations I've ever had. We're going to take a quick break from the show to talk about my favorite company. That's Athletic Brewing Company. And I'll tell you what, this message is not for you. If you're listening to this right now, it's not for you. It's for the future version of you. It's that version of you where you decided to be kind to yourself, good to yourself. You gave yourself an amazing beer. Maybe you had 2, 3. But you're kind because you made Athletic Brewing Company the finest non-alcoholic beer company on the market. That's my opinion. They're also a huge supporter of us. And when I say that, I mean they got behind what we're doing. No one here at Consequence of Habit makes a dime off of Athletic Brewing Company. They've invested in our cause, which is ironic because I've invested in these guys. Well, not financially. God, I wish I had. Man, I missed the boat on that one, but I've just believed in what they're doing. I really, they've got a company that's making amazing products, and they stand behind their own ethics and their values. They give back to the community like they've done with us here at Consequence of Habit. So if you guys want to try amazing beer, but you want to skip the alcohol for whatever reason, do yourself a favor. If it's your first order, use the promo code capital COH20 and get 20% off your first order. Without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Robert Irvine. Today's big one. This is a big one for us, Robert. Today I'm joined by Robert Irvine. Many of you are already going to know who this guy is. This is probably our highest profile guest we've had join us. But first off, thank you very much for joining us here, Robert.
You're welcome. And listen, this is only the beginning, right? I'm not high profile. I'm just a cook, but I have some interesting things to say.
You really do. And I'm going to be completely upfront with you. I've seen you around as a veteran and a first responder. I see social media posts. I've obviously seen you on TV. I've actually been on a flight with you before out of Philadelphia. But when you agreed to come on this is when I really started kind of taking a deep dive into full stalking Robert Irvine mode. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm way more excited after doing that about this interview than before. So
there's a lot of things that we do that a lot of people don't know, and it's not because I don't want them to know. It's because I don't want to seem self-serving, right? We do a lot of great things, and I don't know. My people always tell me, "Oh, you got to let more people know." And then there's that fine line between. Is it bragging that you're doing it, or is it, so I'd rather not say anything and just do it.
Yeah, there's that weird thing, right? Like you're doing something. We're going to obviously get into your charitable work. You're doing something charitable, but you don't want to take too much credit for it because it can almost diminish what you're doing, at least in the eyes of the beholder, right? The person that's actually doing it, because it comes from motivation. What motivates you? And it's not to get the praise from this. But it's kind of collateral, I don't want to say damage, but it's just part of what goes along with it. And when I was thinking about habits and listening to your backstory, I mean, there's obviously just on the surface, we could look at things like physical fitness. It's clearly something that's been important to you. Work ethic, habits, around that. But the one that really stands out to me is the habit of taking care of those who take care of us, right? And there's the first responder, there's the veteran side, but it goes beyond that, and which I think is insanely important. What part of you, at what point in your life did that stand out as something that was important to you?
I think it really, listen, I've always been into service. I was in the military. I've always given back. But there are people, and I'm going to get really deep with here, but it really pisses me off, if you want, of those that have a platform and don't do anything with it except the surface stuff, right? So about, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, when I kind of really started to become I don't know, it sounds, again, I don't like to say it, but a household name, I want to do something with it. So I was working with Gary Sinise for many, many years. I love the guy, building homes, doing all the things that we do. And I was going to Alaska. No, it wasn't. He was going to Alaska, and I was going to Honduras. And I was going to serve special forces guy over the 4th of July weekend. He was going to play in Alaska, and his plane got whatever happened to the plane. And we ended up in social media. And he said to me, "Is this the real Robert Irvine?" And I said, "Yes, it's just the real Gary Sinise, right?" Because then I didn't know anything about the social media game. And he said, "Listen, we're on the same path. We're doing the same things. I want to work with you." And we ended up coming up with the Invincible Spirit Festivals, where he would play music and I would cook for 8,000 to 10,000 folks. And we did our first one at San Diego Naval Medical Center, and it was huge. And, I've cooked for many, many folks before, but with my team. And I had all the Navy chiefs and corpsmen and I literally went all out. It was our first event. So I called Cisco. I got like $30,000-$40,000 worth of stuff donated, like whole sea bass and, things that you would never, after our first one, we never did that again, by the way, right. because the sea bass was so expensive and it was mishandled. That's an understatement, because I could only do so much and left others to do it. But it was such an amazing time that, and somebody coming up to you with, a triple amputee or post-traumatic stress or a broken arm or a pregnant mom. And I say pregnant mom because she was, the spouse of a military guy. And I would sit there and just be in awe that here we are cooking food that was really, okay, it's food. But they were so thankful. And then one thing that Gary was playing a number, never forget it. We'd done our rounds in the morning, and he came of the wards, and he came. A nurse came to me and said, "Hey, can you come and see this 16-year-old kid who's got stage 4 cancer?" And I said, "Of course I can. Absolutely." So I bought some food, took it up. He couldn't eat the food, by the way, and he was just besotted with me for TV and whatever reason. But I was his moment. And I stopped Gary in the middle of a song. And by the way, you never stop Gary Sinise in the middle of a song. He's like, it just, you don't do it. Right. So I stopped him in the middle of a song, and this kid was on the 4th floor at the window with all these tubes and all these just looking. And I said, "See that kid up there? He can't come down." So, I had one of my guys video with this whole thing of Gary singing a song specifically for this kid. And I sent it to his mother when I went upstairs via email. It was the most unbelievable thing. Just broke down in tears that somebody cared so much. And that's how I feel. Like, these men and women are firefighters, are police officers, are doctors, are nurses, are people that wear the cloth of our nation, and their families, and our veterans, and our Gold Star families. It's so simple, but we don't do enough of it. And I wanted to.
Yeah, I've said it on here before, but this idea of doing something for others, it's being so selfless, but it's selfish in its own way, because it brings something back to you that you could never fathom, right? So it's this weird paradox of like, I'm doing for you or for this group, but this thing that comes back to me, I couldn't find this anywhere else other than doing this.
And you're so right. And not many people understand that. I get more joy than I give. I go to bed at night. I sleep good. I feel good. In the last 3 weeks, I've just done 3 bases. And 2 days ago, I was honored to go to just outside of Fort Hood, Texas, because I'm filming. And Robert Irvine Foundation paid a lot of money. We bought food for 850 families in our military that are food insecure. How can that be in our military, right? But E1 through 5 pay grades just don't have enough money and whatever, which I'm fighting on with the Secretary of Defense, who's amazing. It's first time it's been brought up in the history, right? We've got people that can't feed themselves in our military. It was just unbelievable to see the families drive up and just say thank you. And again, you're right. It's something that we're all able to do, and it doesn't have to cost money. It could be listening. It could be opening a car door. And I saw 2 young kids. They were 8 and 9 years old. And so Tyson had donated 20,000 boxes of chicken. So we were giving each family 40 pounds of chicken, basically. Sure. And these 2 kids were having so much fun, busting my chops and humping. The boxes were bigger than them. But it was so cool to see young folks, and the parents obviously were in the military because they were giving back. And I wish we did more of that. During the pandemic, when we talk about doctors and nurses and, our Fit Crunch team did an amazing job of sending snack bars to all the hospitals, and our liquor company was making literally we were the first people, not because of me, because my distiller who run the distillery is like, hey, listen, we can make sanitize. We can give it to hospitals. We can give it to, and we did. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's just do it. And I remember, and this was the strangest thing, I got an insurance increase because they said you had to have 5 53-foot trucks of alcohol stood outside of the distillery. And I'm like, so how much more is that? And it was a fortune. And I'm like, hey, if the hospital needs it and the National Guard needs it and then the police force needs it, the firefighter, just do it. Send me the thing and we do it. And we still do that. But it's such my whole team feels the same way I do. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And that's where I listened to another podcast you're on, and I try not to do that too much because I don't want to know too much because it just messes the interview up. But it was, you were talking about your time in Jamaica, right? And so you're coming from the military, and then you're on the cruise ships. And going back to this thing of taking care of those who take care of us, I was explaining to my wife today, we're sitting there at Cracker Barrel before the interview this morning. I said, workers weren't showing up. The Jamaicans weren't showing up because it was raining. So to solve the problem, you provide transportation. You take care of those who take care of us. And what happens? Productivity
It's strange because it took me forever to figure that out, right? In 1997, I was there, and the Justice of the Peace had a French general manager who passed away since, which is very sad, but a French general manager and a Jamaican director of operations who was the Justice of the Peace. And I went to him one day and I said, we have 720 rooms in a hotel and I can't feed them because I got no people. It's me. Right. And he said, well, Robert, the rain. I'm like, well, okay, but it's just, something we can do. No, I'm like, no. So the corporate chef of Renaissance at that time was a huge, big, like a monster of a guy, like big guy. I said, look, dude, you got to help me out here. I'm just buying the wine. I can't do my job if you don't help me. And we end up getting buses, drop-off points and pick-up points so they could at least get to work. We can get home at night. They can see their families. And it just changed my world, sure. Right? So it was selfish in a way, but also it did something great for those that work for that company. And it still goes on to this. Actually, the company sold the hotel, but this bus service is still in play.
Yeah, that's wild.
Great. Again, feeding those, or not only mind, body, and soul, but giving them something to look forward to that they don't have to stress about.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it builds everybody up, right? I mean, you're providing
Wow.
transportation, you're providing a way for them to care for their families. I mean, that's just, and the fact that it's still running yet the hotel isn't,
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I laugh, I smile to myself some days, and it's weird when and you probably do the same thing when you've helped somebody. You go away, and I always sit with my team after we've done an event, and I'm like, do you know what we just did? You know, it's an inner feeling of warmth, and God put us on this planet for a reason. You know, those folks that put on a uniform that are in Ukraine right now, and Romania and Poland. And then we have and then the opposite end is our first responders, our police officers, EMTs, all them here to make sure that we're safe. And that's an important thing, but we never think about them unless it's, like through COVID or something major happens. And then it goes for a while and then we forget about them again. I don't want to forget about them. I want every day the people to know that no matter how small, they can make a difference.
Yeah. And to even fathom or try to understand what it must be like to be at war for 22 years and the effect, and I'm talking all around, right? I mean, physically, mentally, it's insane to try and put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's had to deal with that for 22 years.
Yeah. I was blessed. I am blessed, still blessed, but I was blessed to go to Afghanistan, Iraq really early on and continually till the end of the war. Yeah. And it's weird because all the base visits I do now, a couple of days ago, were you with me in 2015 in Kabul? And, I just love that because then I'm all grown up and I'm just older. But, I remember 2013, which was late. We were in Afghanistan way before then, but there was a trip in 2013 that I went to Afghanistan with my assistant, Ryan, who you just met setting this up. And his mother said to me, I never forget it. She's like, don't get him killed. Don't get him killed. And we were literally in the middle of Frontenac, which is on the border of Pakistan, where the dam was. Very, very important piece of land for us at that time because of water.
Right.
And the Russians had it before and messed it up and done all these other things that they do. And we landed there and we got an immediate attack on the base. And it was a very small outpost. I never forget it. And we landed on a Chinook helicopter and all of a sudden we had this incoming fire and got told to, come down and lay down and do all this thing. And there were these men and women, young men and women that just, got up, got into vehicles and off they went, to do what they do. And I'm like, okay, so here we are, a stack of water and us, what do we do? Keep down, mortar fire and all this other stuff. And we end up finding a refrigerated, what do they call them? The containers, the refrigerated containers. Yep. So, and it was full of food. It was probably the cleanest thing I've ever seen in my life, which you would expect from the army, but not in the middle of a desert.
Right.
But, and there was lobsters and steak and, so Ryan and I end up cooking a meal for when they got back. And it was just, again, those aha moments that you do what you do, right? You cook a lobster, because every Saturday night it used to be lobster and steak. Well, it must have been, whatever. I don't even remember the day or date. And we cooked and we did, baked potatoes on an open fire, which because there was nothing else. Right. Because with the Americans actually bombed our own base 2 weeks prior because the insurgents got in. But when they came back off this sortie, there was food and they were just, and it's so funny because years later, I still see these people that I met way back when telling me this meal was legendary because of the circumstances. And I say that about food, food gives hope. Food is the conduit to tough conversations. And if I could put every head of state, especially nowadays with, what's going on over in Ukraine, if I could put all the heads of state around one table, get their national dish, have one bite and pass it to the right until everybody's eaten, our world would be in a much better place, because I think food is the equalizer.
Oh, 100. Food and comedy. Those two, I mean, I remember being a young E2, E3. I was in Turkey and I'm sitting around the pool, and there's a Iranian guy. He works for the government sitting next to me. And we ended up talking, and we had some food, and we were laughing. And I realized at that moment, man, if there's anything that lowers barriers, it's those two things. I mean, you just make a human connection, right? I mean, that's just something that,
totally,
yeah, it's inherently going to happen.
It doesn't matter where you come from or what social status or what money you have. We all got to eat,
sure, no
matter what. So when you can break that, aggression, that barrier, it's a lot easier to get around, and I feel that's what we give. Not only we give a lot more, but I think food, when you sit down, and I've been to every base there is around the world at Christmas with the chairman, George Chiefs, and senior leaders, and then on our own with the USO, and just that simple hot dog, chicken. I remember doing in Abu Dhabi, which was in the middle of the R&R. So you would take 2 weeks from theater coming to Abu Dhabi, these things. And I remember going there the first time, and a one-star Air Force guy says, "Well, what's a cook coming to my base for?" And I said, "Change your morale, sir.
right.
Change the morale. Well, you're going to work out with him, but we're gonna change the morale." And he went off to a couple of days and to do some Patriot missile stuff. After 5,000, that night we did 7,900 in a DFAC.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And he came back and he said, "What have you done to my base?" And I said, "You got happy people."
Yeah.
And we use the same food. And it's so funny because years later, I met him. He was a 2-star for Admiral Harris, who was PACCOM commander at that time. And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Of course I remember you." He's like, "What you did was unbelievable." I said, "It's just food, sir."
It's just food. So you've got this. I think what helps is, all right, if you're going for street cred, coming in as a big guy clearly works out. I mean, when we talk about the consequence of habit, fitness is clearly important to you. You don't look, I mean, you could fit in, if they put a uniform and a gun in your hands, you would fit right in with them. So the fact that you take this role and you go, "Hey, I'm a chef, I'm a cook, I'm here to bring you a little bit of joy in this shit you're living through right now."
Yeah.
That adds to it. I think it just the same way it adds to wanting to give or just make people happy, whether they're sick, they're poor, it's just, it comes at you different when it comes at somebody that kind of looks like the way you look.
Yeah, I believe that I always asked General Milley, the chairman right now, even when he was chief of the army, I'm like, "Listen, let me sign up again." He's like, "You're too old." And I laugh at him. I was with him on Thursday last week in the Pentagon because we have a restaurant there.
Sure.
And I said, "Listen, just, I don't know, I feel at my happiest," and this is the truth, if I lost everything tomorrow, in the TV world, the business world, everything, I would want to join back up again. The most amazing experiences I have to date is not money driven, is being amongst the men and women that wear the cloth of our nation, our first responders. Why? Because it's what, and there's a very great guy, General Abrams, General Funk, Michaelis, and General Klein. They're all friends, right? And you say generals. Yeah, but these are generals with a difference because they care. And General Beagle, Biggs Beagle, who runs Fort Drum, I met him on social media, ended up going there. We became best friends because we share the same thing, and that is to help the common man or woman get through the trials and tribulations they have. Mm-hmm. And they just had, somebody got shot through a leg in a train exercise. And okay, so let's help the family, let's help the thing, and it's organic. You first of all, I want to put on a uniform again. I'm too old, but I would do it in a heartbeat tomorrow. But I feel that what we bring right now, we're working on this whole holistic feeding with the Army. And I'm really excited about it because for 10 years we've talked about, what is feeding in the military. It's not just food. It's spiritual. It's nutrition. It's sleep. It's all the things that we think of or we don't think of. We think of health as physical health, but it's also mental health.
Yeah, what 100%. We're actually holding our first, because this is a podcast. We're a nonprofit as well, and we're holding our first mindfulness, meditation, and functional movement workshop in April outside Dover Air Force Base. So it's a big deal for us. We're flying people in. We raised money this year, and we are like, I'm going
next year. You keep me in mind, but I because I feel that mind, body, spirit is the way forward, and obviously so does the senior leadership now for the first time in ever.
Yeah,
it used to be let's put 180 million into a drone. Now we're putting money into and it's a pilot program, of course it is, like everything else. But now as people are being held accountable, and I find that we feed the people correctly, we take care of them correctly, we're going to get a better product from them just by taking care of them.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I say this, about to leadership, about our first responders. I go, look, if you're not doing it because you just care about your people, let's do it monetarily. I'm telling you now, you're going to have a better result. I said, what these men and women go through on a regular basis, it's expected for them to be struggling in one way or the other, whether it's sleep, whether they're eating shitty food because they're going through some tough times, and maybe some fat and sugar gives them a little dopamine, makes them feel good. This whole idea of true wellness, of understanding what these people go through is not normal. So let's give them everything that we can and build a program around that. It's unfortunate it's taken this long, but I think we're really seeing a change.
Well, I think COVID was a huge part of, spurring change when you're seeing young kids that are confined to their homes and not their friends, and the amount of suicides of young children, not only in the military, but outside across the board, healthcare workers, I'm upset with the first responders, not the first responder, but the leadership in the service, because it's no different to the military. And most people that wear a uniform get out of one uniform, get into another one, right? Police officers or firefighters, etc. And yet I've been to firehouses, 1,000 firehouses, starting way back when I was doing Dinner Impossible in San Diego with we lost 4 fire chiefs and one call, and I went to feed the families. And there's one thing, Guy Fieri does a great job of taking care of our first responders too. I love him for that. But I don't think they are doing the right things in the firehouses, with finances and take care of food and the same with the police officers. Police officers are no different to our military. There's a pay grade and they get this and they can afford this. Well, you know what? It's about time we started to look at these. What are they getting paid? How can they live? How do they live?
Right.
On the means they get, and they scrape by. And I've seen it. I get so upset when I see the housing and the or if they get housing or not, the food allowances they get, and then you expect them to jump into burning buildings and get shot on the street and all these things that have become worse now than they ever have been.
Right.
It drives me nuts. This defund the police, do this. Listen, there are bad apples in some areas in every walk of life, but you cannot paint a brush and instantly wipe out every good thing that other people have done.
It's a lack of communication. And it's a lack of understanding of what these people go through on a regular basis. I mean, you can say, hey, why didn't they do this? But then you have to say, well, for the past 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years, this person has been dealing with life or death situations. They don't know when they're coming. It's not like, And people don't understand what it feels like to be under true fight or flight stress.
Yeah.
Having, maybe you didn't sleep, maybe, you know, and you know, we could probably go down the rabbit hole. This probably for
Oh, I know.
forever.
But I don't condone, you know, the bad actors, right? I don't condone that at all. What I feel is that we should be training people better, giving them the information and the training need to do a job. And by the way, in England, we don't have guns.
I know.
Right. We at airports now we do. But for years, we've had a baton or a truncheon, and, you know, they dealt with it. Now, obviously, crime is a little different. So our first responders are under a lot more stress. Our firefighters, you know, I can go on forever with this one. But, you know, I just feel that, you know, if we have the best fighting force, the best first responders, then we have to give them the tools to do their job.
And the training, right.
Not only the tools that they use, right, whether it be a rifle or a hose or, you know, whatever, but also give them the respect that they need. Yeah. And I don't think we do that. And the past couple of years have been really tough. With, you know, and I've been into those racially charged situations with the show, with my own show, and I can't believe that the training, and we haven't adapted.
Yeah.
To training, you know, and that's the biggest thing, the adaptation of the training to modern times.
Yeah. Is it strange to be in circles just because of the show? You're out in California, you're surrounded by a lot of other high profile people, to be in these circles that just don't see eye to eye with you on these types of things?
I'm really blessed in that, you know, when I've worked with Gary, you know, Tim Allen, James Caan, Clint Eastwood, all these people that I've met through Gary really see the real picture, and they give and they donate and they do amazing things. Then you see, you know, other people that don't do that. And I mean, it drives me nuts because they have the resources to be able to, even if they don't do something, they can give the resources like Jeff Bezos just did to Jose Andres, 100 million to feed folks, right? Okay, great. He's not going to miss 100 million because he's got plenty. But I wish others would do that, but not necessarily just to feed people, but to change things.
Yeah.
I always look at people with platforms and say, okay, what are you doing? Right. Yes, you're making money and you're employing people, but what are you actually doing? When I die, I want people to say, you know, he actually did something.
Well, I think they're missing out. Like, whatever your cause is, like, and you talked about being in Texas and handing out food last weekend, and I got on social media and I looked at it, and I don't think I'm qualified to say this, but to me, you had a glow about you that you only comes along with giving to others. So it doesn't have to be veterans. It doesn't have to be first responders. Whatever your cause is, I almost look at it like it's a price of admission. You've gotten to a place in your life, and you know, everyone likes to think they're self-made, but there's a lot of things that go into you know, there's a lot of luck in life. You know,
listen, there's more than luck. It's being in the right place at the time. It's luck. It's meeting people. So I have always had this big belief, JT, that you be nice to everybody, no matter who they are. So I'll be on a plane or I'll be in an airport. And I remember a couple of months ago, I was in the airport. I was so tired. We'd been on a 9-week run. And I fly commercial.
I know. I saw you.
I was sitting in Atlanta airport, and I was so dog tired. I just fell asleep with my wife sitting next to me. And, you know, you fall asleep, you snore, you grunt, you dribble, you do all those things. And a woman literally put her hand over, you know, take a selfie while I was asleep. And my wife said to the person, you know, if you want a picture, I'll wake him up. But, you know, don't take a picture, you know. So she woke me up. I took the picture. And a life of service, you don't have a choice. You have to be nice the minute you wake up in the morning. I have no problem with that, but you have to be nice to everyone. It took a while for my wife, who's already on TV and she's a wrestler and she's well known, to understand, because we didn't get that much time to start with when we first started dating, when we got married. because I wouldn't change my life of giving. And she married into that, whether she liked it or not. My kids, the same thing. So my kids and my wife had suffered with my time. And I said, listen, what makes me excited is to do this. And that's why I'm put on this planet. And I took Gail to Afghanistan in the middle of the heaviest fighting in Mosul. Wow. And the only reason I took her is because she hounded me in the middle of filming. And I said, no, you can't go. It's too dangerous. She said, well, you're going. I called Joe Dunford and I said, hey, she wants to go. And he said, what a great idea. The troops will love it. And I'm like, oh, you're not supposed to say yes. She's supposed to no. And she was in there with Jeff Ross, the comedian, just wrestling with a couple of soldiers in the mud, not mud wrestling, but, just because it was, and it was the highlight of these soldiers' life. Number one, I fed Christmas lunch for 1,000 airborne guys. And it changed her vision completely of why I am so infatuated with doing what I do, not only for the military, as you said, but for all people. And she became a true believer because in Canada, where she's from, they don't have that relationship with the military or first responders, and we do here. So it really helped me by taking her, even though I didn't want to take her, because she understood what I enjoy about it and how I sleep at night. It's the same with the show. When we go to a show and I don't know the people I'm going to help, I choose not to. And the team want to give me an overview. And I said, no, they'll tell me when I walk in the door and I see it myself. So they're all working today. That's why I can do this. I walk into the restaurant in Abilene, Texas tomorrow, and I'll figure it out based on the conversations just like we have.
Yeah.
It's fun.
All right, we're going to take a pause right here to talk about the Patriot Fund. Now, the Patriot Fund, they fall right in line with what Robert Irvine is talking about, and that is serving those who serve us. Patriot Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit benefiting the veteran community. So whether you're active duty, Guard, Reserve, a veteran, or the family of any of the above, these guys have been financially supporting other nonprofits to bring amazing things to these communities, to include Consequence of Habit. This first event that we've got coming up here, April 5th. To be honest with you, without them, it wouldn't be happening. So please check them out at thepatriotfund.org. All right, so I'm going to switch it up here a little bit. I'm going to talk about the 7 degrees of separation from Robert Irvine. I have a phone call with the director of Hell or High Water on Wednesday. And I'm looking at the poster, and in a small print, executive producer is Robert Irvine. I'm like, man, this is meant to be, man. So can you tell us about that project real quick? So
it was really weird. And I'll tell you as it was, as it is, as it happened.
Okay.
So the old production company that used to run Restaurant Impossible, the GM had got this project. He is now, they don't run my show anymore because it went to another company. Said to me, hey, you do so much for the military. I've got this guy. His name's Taylor. I said, well, okay, tell me about the guy. So put a Glock to his head, post-traumatic stress, Navy rescue swimmer, didn't go off, wanted to do something great. So he sailed around Cape Horn. I'm like, well, that's all right. Number one, sailing, because that's my bag. Number two, he's a military guy. That's my bag. Post-traumatic stress, that's my bag. I said, I want to meet him. So they flew him into Philadelphia, and I saw a rough cut of what they'd already done. And I'm like, absolutely not. And I didn't know it was this guy sitting next to me. I didn't know. They didn't tell me, oh, this is Taylor. So I go in, rip in this place, this 1.5 hour documentary to pieces. I'm like, okay, all the things were wrong. And I said, okay. And this guy says, well, why are they wrong? That's how I met Taylor. By the way, become best friends. So I said, well, tell me about you. Just talk to me. He said, well, I joined the military. I was a rescue swimmer. I said, no, go back. I want to know about your school. And this is the Restaurant Impossible training. I said, tell me about school. He said, well, I was a remedial swimmer. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, I'm 13 years old. I can't swim. I go swim with 5-year-olds. I said, where's that in the movie? You're a Navy rescue swimmer.
Right.
Where is that?
It's the struggle.
So we sent a team back to the school. He's got every record on the school wall. Well, why is that not in there? Where I want to see all the footage. So we took all the footage. I went through it piece by piece. I'm like, no, I want that. I want this. I want this. And that's how it started. But I became best friends with Taylor because I want to continue to change people's lives. So he that sailboat that he bought, that's never sailed before, that he did up with YouTube videos. When you see this docu movie, you're gonna go nuts. It to me anyway. It was a way of getting that message that if you save one life, then you've done your job.
Right.
And this guy who got on a boat, who said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring awareness of post-traumatic stress and TBI, who goes out 400 miles off the coast of Pensacola, never sailed, got in the largest squall ever, boat caught fire, and so on and so on. You watch it, it's mind-boggling. And all this was shot on GoPros and drones that they did. The footage is unbelievable. The movie, unbelievable. So that's how I got involved in it. And I'm trying to bring Taylor to Tampa. He lives in Texas. I'm trying to bring Taylor to Tampa to start the sailing program in Tampa for veterans.
That's fantastic.
But I've already committed to doing around the world leg with him next year in the sail. But another great guy that just wants to save one person.
Yeah. So I'm going to flip that on you. You're talking about going back to school. So Robert Irvine is a student, a terrible student. If you showed up, right?
Yeah.
You get caught by your dad skipping school when he sneaks up behind you.
It was my mother.
Oh, that's right. You answered the phone.
I answered the phone to her. Yeah.
But as I'm hearing this, you're like, hey, I just hated school. I hated it. I wasn't smart, and those were your words, not mine. You go into the Navy, and something happens, right? So you've got this kid who's not showing up for school. He thinks of himself in a certain way. I'm not smart, but something flips, and not only are you feeding people, you find this joy in food, but you're feeding mass amounts of people. Now, the equations that go into all of this to make that happen, that then you go into the cruise ships, you go into the restaurants, you go into working for Trump. How does that even happen? I mean, did it just start clicking, or like what did that look like?
Well, one of the things that started that, when I was 11 years old, my mother and father divorced, and it was pretty harsh, that's for sure. But my dad would live, we live with my grandmother, and he would literally watch me walk to work, to school, watch my football games and whatever else. They didn't stay divorced very well. They actually did. They stayed divorced till he passed away, but they got back together years later, about a year later, but never remarried till he never remarried. Which is kind of weird. Every Sunday he would ask my mother to remarry him, and she would say no. But
that's hilarious.
So my dad was a big drinker, and he used to go to the pub every night. And he met this guy, who was a retired Navy chief that worked with Sea Cadets. So I said, he came home one day, said, "You're going to join Sea Cadets," and I said, "What's that?" Right. Boy Scouts at the sea, basically. And I said, okay. So I went down there one day, and I was like, oh my God. So it's young kids training, wearing the uniform, training what you were doing in the Navy. And I used to go away on weekends and naval bases, Marine bases, warships, active duty ships. And I just fell in love with it. I'm like, it was like a duck to water. So whilst I was a really bad pupil, I was really good at this. And it clicked for me that no matter what, I was a good leader. So I run the NCO of the year when I was 14 years old and all that kind of stuff. And I joined the Navy, literally. My mother called me not going to school, and she took me to the recruitment office. Never forget, I was 15 and a half years old. And with parents' permission, you could take the test, and I did. and I was like the dummy of the class. 5 being the lowest in maths and 5 being the lowest in English. I think they screwed up, actually. I think I didn't pass anything and they just needed people. But because I was really dumb. I was great at woodwork, great at sports, great at history, but maths and English were boring as hell to me. So I joined the Navy. I literally took the test when I was 15 and a half years old. I passed. They said to me, "Oh, you can become a cook. You're not going to be a pilot." And I'm like, "That's amazing, because that's what I want to do." And at my 16th birthday, I joined the Navy. And it was just weird. I did my 8 weeks of basic training. Now, this is a true story, and nobody knows this. So
exclusive.
I don't know why it came out now, but it has. So when I was at basic training at HMS Pembroke, and it was my food training, not my TikTok marching and clash your kit. No, that's not true. It was HMS Raleigh, not Pembroke. My uniform was immaculate in my bed because I'd been in the Sea Cadets. I'd done it every weekend for 3 years. And my chief, who was an aviator, came up to me and he said, "We're going to throw you out." And I said, "What do you mean you're going to throw me out?" I said a few more expletives than that, but he said, "Because you're not a team player." And I said, "Excuse me? What do you mean I'm not a team player? I'm helping everybody."
Right.
It's like, "Well, no, they're failing. And you're like up there and they're down there." And I'm like, "Well, what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to do it for them." So, but I would get up at 2:00 in the morning, clean my boots, press my stuff, make my bed. I mean, I was ready. When they walked in at 6:00, I was ready to go. And he said, "Well, you got to train these guys how to do it." So at 2:00 in the morning, the following day, I literally tipped 8 people out of bed. I literally upended the bed. And I said, "Okay, you're failing. This is how we're going to do this." And I showed them how to press the uniform, clean the shoes, make the bed. And when I passed out, my graduated, my chief came out to me like, "You're going to be a great leader." And I was. It took me a minute to figure out what leadership was. And I think, so every rank I went through the Navy and every ship and everything I did, I was always top of my class because I spent more time doing it. And if I didn't know it, I had to understand it. The physical fitness was easy for me, always has been. But the cooking seemed easy. The manipulation of raw product into something always seemed easy to me. And we're still doing that now. But I use those same techniques that I learned, 40 years ago, 45 years ago in the military today in my businesses. Yeah. It's the same thing. And I think if anybody's listening, which they are, the military is a great stepping stone to any career. It really is. Whatever MOS, whatever you want to do, you can learn it and get out and make, 20 times the money.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, for me, it wasn't, I'd like to say it was this patriotic thing, but I was just a lost kid, right? I was a lost kid. I didn't know where to go. And it was 4 years that I knew people would look at me and think I was doing something productive, right? And I was. But
you were, but it wasn't a choice. It was, I'm going to do it. And the same thing for me. Listen, I felt, and you said, quite honestly, it was my words. I'm like, I'm a dummy, dude. What am I going to do? I didn't want to work in a supermarket because I already stocked shelves in a frozen food market, and I was good at it, by the way. I was really good at it. But I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. My brother was in the Army. My dad was in the Army.
Yeah.
My whole family, and I went the Navy route, Navy and Marine Corps route, because I liked the ocean. I liked we were in the Falklands, I never forget, and I would just stand on the back deck, doing flight ops, and I just look at the ocean and like, this is where I'm meant to be. Wow. That's why I went to cruise ships.
Yeah, I found I needed it. And that's why I even ask you about that, about coming from school, and then all of a sudden you're in this world of structure, and now you excel. And I found like I needed it. I need structure. If you leave me in my own devices, it's probably going to get ugly fairly quick. So put me in somewhere where and I just seem that's knowing myself. I do better that way.
I think I needed that to start with. Although my dad was, a little Irish guy. I mean, you didn't step out of line because he would bang, smack you hard.
Yeah.
So I had structure, but it was boredom for me.
Yeah.
I got bored really quickly. I'm a genius in the things of business that we do. And I mean, listen, I've started companies that are very big companies now. Our Fit Crunch started 7 years ago. It's a $120 million a year company. Wow. So we got 6 or 7 of those. But it's all geared towards our foundation. So if you look at all our products, it's all geared to the foundation. So I was always, I think, smart in a different way, not book smart, very street smart.
Well, you talk about that. I mean, even your experiences working for Trump and going back to, you're saying this was never about money. You went in there number 2, making $53,000 a year, right? And spent 4 months studying people. And the thing that really stuck out in that, and just to give a little backstory, and please, Robert, correct me if I'm saying this wrong. You were asked going in, you said, look, we've got about 1,200 people we need to fire. And
no. So you're right, but it wasn't me that said that. It was my boss that said that.
Yeah.
He said, here's 1,200 people need to be fired. And I said, well, how about this? You just let me look and see. And for 4 months, coming from Jamaica, right? I've been in Jamaica, so I had a different mentality than most. He was Austrian, amazing guy. And he would say, look, all these people need to be fired. So I went in, I'll never forget it. For 4 months, I was living in bathrooms and hallways. So I came in at work at 6 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. Nobody knew who I was because I just wore jeans. I had a pass in case security stopped me, but nobody knew who I was. I wasn't in a chef's jacket. I was just watching because I needed to understand what was happening in this huge, they were doing $784 million a year in revenue, 15 million in food. It wasn't about money for the food. It was about the service provided, 13 restaurants. So I was coming as the executive sous chef, having come from Jamaica as the executive chef. And I reported directly to the VP and to Donald Trump, the president of the company. I wasn't reporting to anybody. So every night I would go in, I would write, they were doing drug deals. They were doing theft. There was so much going on. It wasn't unbelievable. So after 4 months, and I had a Honda Civic. Have you seen the movie Roadhouse?
Of course.
They slashed the tires, smashed the windows. I had death threats. It was a great school for me because I didn't give a monkeys. I didn't give it. If you want to shoot me, shoot me. I just come out of the military. I don't care, whatever. Hopefully not, but my wife, so there was nothing of my personal information in any system in the hotel because there was mold. It was moles everywhere, right? Oh, this is where he lives. This is his wife. So we lived in a hotel, but nobody knew an annex of the hotel. So I lived there for 4 months before I came out. And then one day I came out with a jacket, a chef sat in a room, put all the chefs together. There was 1,163 employees. We were doing 15.3 million in revenue, and Trump wanted more money. And I said, great. I walked in. I said, hey, my name's Robert Irvine. If you don't do your job, you'll be fired. 2 minutes later, I went out the room. The other 3 executive sous chefs, so I was number 4. 2 of them were in the bathroom. I kicked the stall in. They were smoking, reading the newspaper. I said, you're fired. You can't fire me. You're the same as me. I fired 312 people. And spent a year in arbitrations. I won. And, we cleaned up. We brought great people in. And in fact, one of the chefs that was there 3 months has been with me 25 years. Wow. Shane Cash, former Marine. And we went from 15.3 million to 83.3 million in a year.
That's unbelievable.
So it was a great proving ground for me in leadership and listening. Although I was still a little hot-headed then, but
that's the part, that really, the fact you're told we have 1,200, you said, let me decide that. And when we get into leadership, it's without those people even knowing they're being watched, the vetting process to say, no, this person, they may be doing a shitty job now, but under the right leadership, it will bring it will bring the correct stuff out of them.
And it's great because Eric, my boss, never stood. And leadership to me, and I'm sure it resonates with you. Leadership is getting in and doing it the same as the guys and girls.
Yeah.
And once they see that you can do it and you're willing to do it, they're willing to stand it. I always say this on the shows today. I'm like, hey, listen, when I march up the hill, I want the whole people behind me. I don't want to get to the top and find them on my own. And I would come in at 6, after they knew who I was. I would come in at 6 o'clock in the morning and spend 4 hours flipping eggs. We do 5,000 breakfasts a day in a coffee shop, and I would flip eggs for 4 hours with the guys, and get to know them. And one of the things that General Funk, I'll never forget this, and there was a few Abrams before him, they would get to know the people. They knew everything about the people. And I would say, okay, tell me about your family. Tell me where you live. Tell me about what's going on. Tell me about your kids. Because that work ethic comes from their life. Yeah. Right? Not only this growing up, what's going on in their life. I knew 1,163 people's lives. And when the kid got sick, I'm like, look, go home. I'll take care of it. Whatever. You need something. What do you need? Somebody passed away. We sent flower. All those things that we do today, because I wanted to understand why they weren't doing their job. What was getting in the way. So I would have meetings every week in different departments to say, okay, what don't you have? Why can't we achieve these numbers? Why can't we? Well, we don't have this. Why not? I'm looking like, well, why? Well, because no, then don't hold them accountable for the job. Yeah. And I would go to my boss and I would say, hey, listen, I need this much money. I need to give them this. Watch what happens in 2 weeks from now. And sure enough, it would happen.
Yeah, when you put people in those positions, they'll perform not out of fear, but out of respect. And that's been, I remember like one of the first times having a true leader, and you did what you were going to do, not because you were worried about getting in trouble, but you were worried about disappointing somebody who believes in you, right? Yeah. So, it's a powerful thing.
Powerful, yeah, absolutely powerful. Yeah, but yeah, I've always, every job I've done the same thing because I know it works.
Yeah, right. It's a proven equation here. Well, listen, I know we're coming up on time here, but being the show is about habits, you're a guy who spends a insane amount of time on the road, traveling. We all know eating in airports, how crappy that can be. Break down some of your habits, your staple habits that you try and hit no matter what.
Well, I think the number one habit for me is in the morning, I'm up at 5 o'clock every morning. I work out no matter where we are. It doesn't matter. I have a team of people on the road. We have 42 people on the road right now, but we have literally 3,000 something in the back of me and various things that we do. And they have the same habit. They have to have an hour in the gym every day, no matter what time it is. They don't have to be in at 5 o'clock in the morning because, I'm different. But I work out before I go to set. I eat the same meal every day.
Do you?
For breakfast, yeah. I have oatmeal. So I get up, I'll take a shake. I do oatmeal, 3 egg whites, and 2 dry toast, wheat toast. 2 hours later, chicken, and so on and so on. So I have the same habit of eating. I do drink. I drink beer occasionally, but I drink tequila and vodka. I love gin. Don't do that excessively. I only drink on off days. They're my habits. I call my wife probably 10 times a day.
Wow.
She gets a morning video from me, and she gets a night video before I go to bed. They're my habits. They're rules that I set in place. I'm on the road 345 days a year. Yeah, 150 of those with our military. And no matter where I am, no matter what time zone, there's never a day that she doesn't wake up to a video or go to bed with a video. Man. And I think that's really important. Another habit, treat people with dignity and respect and give them the respect the moment you meet them. Then it's up to them to lose that respect.
I like it.
And just honor everybody. They're the kind of things that I live by. And they've done me, touch wood, pretty good so far, so I stick with them.
Last question. You talk about things growing and even the people you've helped. Do you ever sit back? Because, sometimes it's almost like having a kid. You don't realize how they've grown because you see them every single day. You ever sit back and go, oh, good God, look at this life. Look at where I came from to what we're doing now, how much good we're doing.
I don't. The only time I do that is when we finish an event, and I'm very emotional. Yeah. People think, oh, you're a tough guy. I am when I'm working, but when I'm doing what I do with the military, first responders, kids, the shows, I get really emotional. It's normally when we finished and I'm with my team and I say, look what we just did there. That's when I get emotional, and I really feel it. And I had a show a couple of years ago where I was really tough on a 30-year-old girl named Caitlin Pillsbury. And I finished the show and she wouldn't accept failure. She was failing really badly and she wouldn't say the word. And I got really angry with her. And I'm like, listen, for you to move forward, you have to accept that you're failing, to the tune of $500,000.
Yeah.
You're failing. It is what it is. And she said, I'm not failing. She was screaming and tears. Well, I left the show. We finished the show and she got into an accident. She was hit by a drunk driver or a driver. He wasn't drunk because we never found that out, but and just ran from the scene. She ended up traumatic brain injury, lost the restaurant. That was the least of the worries, but she's still going through brain school right now, years later. And I called Food Network and I said, hey, I want to you've got to raise money for this girl. She's going to lose the restaurant. I'll have my lawyers take care of that stuff, whatever, because she's a good girl. And they said, yes, here's $50,000 from us and make as much money as you can. We'll pay for everything, whatever. It was unbelievable. And I think that was, one of the episodes that really, I don't know, affected me. I'm best friends with her still. I talk to her every day. And another one was a young kid, 13 years old, LJ, one of, 3 in the world with a very rare genetic disease. He was obese. He was autistic. And we did a show. He's in all my live shows. There's a clip of him in my live shows because it was the first time when my daughter was 16 years old, Annalise, who's now a pediatric speech pathologist at 23, came to the show and they were going to lose their house. And I broke down. I'm giving back a restaurant and I said, and they were all upset. And I'm like, what's the matter? And she said, we're going to lose our house. I'm like, no, you're not. Uh-huh. So I paid for the house. But anyway, and it was that moment where this kid jumped out of his wheelchair in the restaurant because he saw a picture he painted on a visit or a trip he did with some other folks. And I realized that we have the power to change lives, not only through food, but just by kindness.
Right.
And we don't emphasize that as much. And again, I said at the beginning, it doesn't cost you money. It could be just listening that saves a life, helping somebody across the road, all those things. Sure. And my girls are the same. Annalise and Talia. Annalise is married at 23, pediatric speech pathologist. Talia's becoming a lawyer at 20, and she works for the public defender's office. So it's kind of a continuation, and I'm so proud of them. It's pretty cool.
It's a life of service. So
yeah, pretty cool.
All right, Robert, thank you. I'll make you squirm a bit because I know you don't like hearing it or talking about it, but yeah, it's truly inspiring to see somebody doing what you're doing. Man, you've given me a blueprint in a lot of ways of kind of ways to kind of give back, and it's been very.
I want to help you on this. This program you're doing. Please keep in touch with me and my team because our foundation is all about that mental and physical health. And if I can be there next year or draw attention or help you in any way, shape, or form, and I mean that. That's not just an empty promise or an empty statement. I'll help you as any way. We partnered with Boston University for traumatic brain injury, and we've got some good resources. So if I can help you, even fundraising, we have a big thing in Philly called Beats and Eats every year.
I'll be there because I'm in Philly.
it's pretty awesome. So
this is fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much. We're you know the struggles of being a nonprofit. We're new, and it's credibility, right? It's just getting out there. We've got 5 different programs we're running this year, and we're hustling. We're hustling. We're doing everything we can.
We just taken over a Warrior Reunion Foundation to bring it into our things. So that's pretty cool too. And yeah, we do a lot with TAPS and a lot with USO. And if I should get you involved in some of the TAP stuff, because you really understand what it is. Awesome.
That would be huge for us. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Take care. Everybody, that's a wrap. Like always, thanks again for checking us out. This show is brought to you by the team here at Consequence of Habit and is an arm of our 501c3 nonprofit. The show is produced and edited by the one and only Anthony Palmer and is part of the Palm Tree Pod Company network of podcasts. And that's it. I'll catch you guys next week.